In this video, I'm going to work out just two examples of how you would solve radical equations. I am assuming that you already have a background in this and that you have done several of these, and you're just wanting to see some more examples on how you would go about doing that. So in this first example, I've got the square root of x plus 1 plus 3 equals 2x. So the first thing I need to do on this left-hand side here, I've got a radical, and then I've got an extra number here that's being added or subtracted. If I want to be able to square both sides of the equation, I need to make sure that this radical is isolated. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 3 from both sides of the equation. So then I would have the square root of x plus 1 is equal to 2x minus that 3. Alright, now at this point, alright, I can, since my radical is isolated, I can square both sides of the equation. So I'm going to square the left-hand side, and I'm going to square the right-hand side. When I square this left-hand side, the square root and the square goes away. That's why we do it. They're inverse operations of each other. So I would have an x plus 1 on this side. Alright, squaring out this is a binomial, so I'm going to have to FOIL it. Alright, so first term squared, so 4x squared. Inside terms, I would have a negative 6x, alright, times another negative 6x, which is going to give me a minus 12x. And then squaring the last term there, a negative 3 squared would be a positive 9. At this point, I need everything moved to the right-hand side. I am going to move it to the right-hand side because I want my leading coefficient there to remain positive. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. I am going to subtract 1 from both sides. So that's going to give me a 4x squared. Subtract x from both sides. That's going to give me a minus 13x. Subtract 1 from both sides. That's going to give me a plus 8. Alright, now looking at this, I have a quadratic. Alright, just looking at this right off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure it does not factor, which means then you are going to have to use the quadratic formula. Okay, so quadratic formula. Alright, and I'll set the quadratic formula up, but then I am going to assume that at that point you would grab a calculator. Alright, so quadratic formula is negative b, so negative 13, and then plus or minus b squared. So that negative 13 squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So 2 times 4. Alright, so just plugging everything in the quadratic formula so that you know. At this point you would use your graphing calculator. You can pause the video and then see if you can get these two decimals. Alright, if you do this successfully, you're going to get x is approximately 2.43, and you're also going to get x is approximately 0.82. Okay, so I would highly recommend that you pause the video, use the calculator, see if you can come up with those two values. Alright, now at this point, you cannot just assume that those are the answers to the equation. You need to do a check. You need to plug them back into that equation and see if they work. Now, these are both decimals that go on forever and ever and ever. They're irrational numbers here, see? So doing it that way, taking them and plugging them back in, is going to be rather difficult. You might be able to do it successfully with your graphing calculator. However, I would actually recommend doing a sketch or a graph, and that is assuming that you can sketch these equations. Alright, I have several videos that go through and show you how to just do basic sketch of like lots of different types of equations, and if you have that skill, if you've got that knowledge, then the check on this is going to be really simple. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch this left-hand side because I know what square root functions look like, and I can get a rough enough sketch that I'm going to be able to tell what the answers are here, hopefully. Alright, and then this on this side, well, that's just a straight line. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to roughly sketch this out for my check. Let's see if this works. Alright, I know on a square root function like this that this is going to tell me that the square root function shifts 1 to the left and 3 up. Okay, so 1 to the left and 3 up. Alright, and then I know all square root functions go up and to the right. Okay, alright, now this function right here, it's a linear equation, 2x, it goes through the origin and has a slope of 2. Alright, so it goes through the origin and then has a slope of 2. So up 2 over 1, so roughly right there. Alright, and so then it's going to look roughly like this. Alright, now the point at which those two cross will be the solution to that equation. Alright, so in other words, they cross right about here. Okay, and it's a rough estimate there, but I know I've got two choices here. It only crosses in one spot, so I only have one solution to this. I've got a 0.82 and a 2.43. Well, 0.82 would be somewhere over here, and they didn't cross here. So then that means this value right here where they cross has to be my 2.43. Alright, so if you've got that handle on being able to roughly sketch those and see what's going on in a sketch, then you're going to be able to hopefully more easily determine that. Okay, so without doing anything, I know that x is approximately 2.43, and that's my only solution to this equation. All right, and if you do not have be able to sketch and you can't do those, go check out my channel, some of my other videos, because I go through every one of the different types of equations and how you can just real easily sketch those. Okay, moving on to my second example here. I've got the square root of x minus 1 is equal to the square root of 2x plus 1. Alright, so on this, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and square both sides to begin with. I am going to treat this as a binomial and go ahead and square both sides of the equation. So if I square this side, and then I square this side, that's going to allow me to get rid of those radicals actually rather quickly here. Alright, so we're going to have to FOIL this out. So if I square the square root of x, I'm going to have an x. Alright, inside terms would be a negative x squared, or negative square root of x, and then another negative square root of x. So that's going to give me a minus 2 square root of x. Alright, and then squaring a negative 1 is going to give me a positive 1. Alright, and squaring this radical on the right hand side, they're inverse operations. It's just going to make that radical go away. So 2x and then plus 1. Alright, now at this point, let's see what we can do. I would say we need to subtract 1 from both sides of the equation. When I subtract 1 from both sides of the equation, then I'm going to basically cross those out. Alright, now at this point I've got an x and an x on this side. I think what I want to do is I want to subtract x from both sides of the equation. Let's actually show that one in here. So minus x and minus x over here. So these two x's are going to go away. Then I'm going to be down to a negative 2 square root of x equals 2x minus 1x. It's just going to give me an x on that side of the equation. Okay, now I think at this point I need to get rid of this square root, so I'm going to have to square both sides of the equation again. So I'm going to square this side, and I'm going to square this side. Okay, so when I take the negative 2 and square it, I will get a 4. Square root of x squared, inverse operations there, it's going to leave me with an x. And then on this side I will just have an x squared. Alright, at this point I think I'm going to... I want my leading coefficient on my x squared term to remain positive, so I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides of the equation. So then x squared minus 4x. Alright, now here you could choose to, since this factors nicely, I think of a factor, you could also do quadratic formula if you wanted, but I think we're going to just factor out an x because that's going to be the easiest way to do this. So x minus 4. That means I'm going to have two choices here. I'm going to have a possibility of x equals 0. I'm going to have another possibility of x equals 4. Okay, now on this one, you have to check, just like we had to check on this first one, you have got to check again on this one. Alright, so you're going to have to plug 0 back in, and you're going to have to plug 4 back in. And so just real quickly, you might want to pause the video and do that check yourself. Alright, however, I'm almost positive that when I plug in x equals 0, I can do that really quick. Here, if I plug in 0 there, I'm going to get a negative 1 on this side. If I plug in 0 here, square root of 1 is 1. Alright, so I have negative 1 equaling 1. That is a false statement, so this one does not work. Alright, when I plug in 4, let's see if we can do that equally as easy. If I plug in a 4 there, that's going to give me a 2. 2 minus 1 will give me a 1 on this side. Plugging 4 in here, 4 times 2 is 8. Plus 1 more is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. So then I'm going to get a 1 equals 3, which is again a false statement. All right, so both of those answers did not work. So for this, it turns out to be no real solutions. All right, and so that's why it's extremely important that you check each of your answers when you are solving radical equations. Definitely, thanks for watching. This was just 2 really quick examples of how you go about solving equations. Definitely hope it helped you. Be sure and give me a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and share with your friends. Thanks.